Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Pad, Paramahansa, Parudika Acharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Vishnu Pad, Paramahansa, Parudika Acharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Okay. On this 29th day of June, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're in chapter 15 entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. And we are in text number 12, which is on page 604 in most of our books here. Yada dityagatam tejo jagadbhasayate kilam yachandamasi yachagnau tattejo vidhimamakam yada dityagatam tejo jagadbhasayate kilam yachandamasi yachagnau tattejo vidhipamakam yadadityagatam tejo jagadbhasayate kilam yachandamasi yachagnau tattejo vidhimamakam. Go ahead. Yadadityagatam tejo jagadbhasayate kilam yachandamasi yachagnau tat tejo vidhimamakam. Yet that which adityagatam in the sunshine, tejaha splendor, jagat the whole world, basiyate illuminates, akilam entirely, yet that which chandramasi in the moon, yet that which cha also agnau in the fire, tat that tejaha splendor, vidhi understand mamakam from me. Translation, Krishna says, the splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place. But one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the moon, the splendor of the sun, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness, lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and He is giving herewith the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole solar system. There are different universes and solar systems, and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. But in each universe there is only one sun. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10.21, the moon is one of the stars, nakshatranam ahang shashi. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff. They set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without His mercy, there cannot be sun. Without His mercy, there cannot be moon. And without His mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of the sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So in various places in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we find passages like this in which we are encouraged to connect our everyday experiences with the divine, with Krishna. This is there's a chapter in second canto called The First Step in God Realization, and it's all about the universal form, which is basically a similar idea here, and that is that in contemplating this world as part of the universal form, you see it the different elements of the world, like the sun and the moon, as the eyes of the Lord. The mountains are as bones, the rivers as veins, things like that. So this is one way of sanctifying our vision, so that we're reminded of Krishna even in our everyday activities. In the 7th chapter, we have this famous passages, the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the sound and ether, like that. So similarly here, Krishna is describing that the actual light of these things, and any light that we see, ultimately emanates from Krishna. Sometimes it's said that it's all beginning with his bodily effulgence. Yasya prabha, in the Brahma Samhita, Yasya prabha pabhavato jagadanda koti koti shashesha vasudhati vibhuti bindam. That Yasya means his. Whose? Govinda's. Govinda is the subject. Like I wish Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose bodily effulgence is this prabha, which is effulgence, called the Brahmajyoti. And it also is connected to the creation. Remember, at the beginning of the 14th chapter, Krishna says, Sarvayonisha Kuntiya Murtiyak Sambhavantiya Tasam Brahma Mahadyoni Aham Bija Bhadakvita. That in one sense this whole material energy is also called Brahman. And he impregnates that. So this is one way of remembering Krishna, and Prabhupada gives us that example here, that we're so dependent on the light of the sun, the light of the moon, electricity. Where would we be without electricity or fire or sun and moon? We couldn't exist. So realizing our dependence on Krishna through these agencies is also another way of becoming God conscious even in this world, simply by the light of this knowledge. This we see differently. That's the idea. Okay, going on. We are on page 605. 5. Are you going to sit in a full lotus posture there like that? Barely get the legs crossed. Okay. For you, that's the lotus posture. Special dispensation. Okay. Text 13. Page 605. I'm going to wait till you get it. Do you need help? You're okay? Okay, here we go. 13, page 605. Gama Vishya Bhutani Darayam Yahamodasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva. Sorry. Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva. Somo Budva Rasatmakaha. Now, Suresh, I must ask you, what happened to the mask? Put the mask on. Otherwise, the mask police will get you. Now you look like a real bandit. You're looking right. All right, let's go on. Krishna says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Purport. It is understood that all the planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water. But when the living spark is out of the body, and the body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet, just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of the dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets, which are floating in the air, are actually held in the fist of the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving things stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in the air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasatmakaha is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. So, one of the things that comes out, when you read these books, is the kind of the obvious axiomatic truth that there's intelligence behind everything. Even if you just a clump of earth that seems to be completely disorganized, just dirt, when you get down into it and you get the molecules and the atoms, you think everything is moving and working in a very precise way. Even I remember, I'm so old that I remember when all we knew about the atom, but there was a nucleus, and the neutrons were in there, and I think the protons were there in the nucleus, and the electrons were going around. Three particles: protons, neutrons, electrons. That was it. And then they developed the electron microscope, where they could get in there, and those big cyclotrons, where they were, accelerators, and then they break them apart, and they found all these other subparticles that were in there, and so they had to tear up all the textbooks, and it started, so all, and it's arranged so wonderfully that things are working. The sun's coming up at just the same time. Our bodies are miracles of balance, chemical balances of things going on. And we know one little stupid little virus, can mess up the whole thing, And so this is, for any intelligent person, this is a strong indication of a supreme intelligence behind everything, which means a supreme person, which means God. How people could convince themselves that it's all came about by chance and somehow organized itself. It's just amazing when you just become a little Krishna conscious. Obviously, there's an intelligence, There's one purport, a famous purport in the second canto, and the verse says something like this: "By a little use of the intelligence, one can hypothesize or understand the presence of the supersoul." And then, in the purport, Prabhupada goes through very systematically, realizing how just in our ordinary life, when you lose something and you try to remember where it is, you're actually calling on, praying. You're not maybe consciously doing it, but that's what you're doing, calling on the super soul to give you that remembrance. Right? From me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness too. and sometimes that forgetfulness is a big blessing. What is PTSD? Post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder, whatever they call it. It means that you had such a trauma, you can't forget it, and you're reliving it, and it's bothering you, it's messing you up, right? So forgetfulness can be a great blessing also. So here, this particular verse is dealing with Krishna saying he enters into the planets. He makes it, Gam is specifically the Earth, I think. Each planet, they stay in orbit. How are things going on? There's a famous story. You haven't been around, maybe you haven't heard this one. I think Prabhupada would tell it, but it's Isaac Newton. He's there, and there's a model he has of the solar system as it was then understood. It's got gears and it's got things holding the planets. So a friend walks in, and he says, "Oh, that's great. That's great. Did you make that?" I said, "No. It just manifested itself by accident." I said, "Come on." His friend said, "Come on, you made it, Isaac, didn't you?" So Isaac, because his friend was an atheist, he says, "Okay, so if the artificial one took an intelligence, what about the real one? The real solar system and all, And it's exactly like that. When devotees see all this organization, it's just more proof that there's a divinity in God, And that's one of the main proofs of God. I think St. Thomas Aquinas, one of these big theologians, the argument from design, which Prabhupada used all the time, that everything is designed so well. Well, there has to be an intelligence. Whereas there's an intelligence as a person, like that. So it's constantly being reiterated in books like the Bhagavad Gita, and we are part of Krishna. We're part and parcel. Prabhupada's favorite, part and parcel. So what does that mean? It means that we also have divine qualities to a certain degree. We're minute, but we have intelligence, we have some controlling power, we have some intuition, we have emotions, we have activities, and all these different things. The problem is that we forget God, and we try to be independent, and we try to be little gods, and then we make a mess of it every lifetime. And so we're punished by the material energy. So the Bhagavad Gita helps us to, stand in awe, not just of God himself, but in his creation. This material energy is so wonderful, and the balance. It's so easy to knock it out of balance. This climate change thing. We are doing that, anthropogenic. The demonic activities. Okay, moving along. Text 14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninang dehamashritaha pranapana samayukta pachamyannam chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuff. Purport. According to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger. And when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 591, also confirm that the Supreme Lord, or Brahman, is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuff. Ayam Agnir Vaishvanaro Yo Yamanta Purushe Yenedam Annam Pachyate. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuff, and by his grace we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.27, this is also confirmed. Sabdadibhyontak patishthanacha. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are 4 kinds of foodstuff. Some are drunk, some are chewed, some are licked up, some are sucked, and he is the digestive force for all of them. Yeah, the digestive force, if that's weak, then disease inevitably follows. So even just to eat something and have it. So the idea is that he's describing how he helps produce the food. The sun, creates the clouds, the water comes by that, the moon nourishes the vegetables. He enters into the planets, the earth, and then of course there's the cooking the food, the eating of the food. So we're dependent on Krishna at every moment. Okay, now this is one of the most famous verses, if not the most memorable verse in this chapter. Sarvasya chahang vidisannivishto mattak smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvar aham eva vedyo vedanta krin veda vedeva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as the Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead and back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of his activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus God is all good, God is all merciful. Anta pavishta shasta jananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand the Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yo sao sarvar vedar giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 114 confirms this in the following words: Tattu samandayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him. And at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. All right. So, Prabhupada is at the end of this purport, he's speaking about this principle of Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. Sambandha is, what does Prabhupada say here? Understand the Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the key of the Sambandha. Bandha means a bondage or a relationship. So Sambandha Gyan is understanding who am I? What am I? What is this world? And what is the source of everything? What's the relationships between those 3? And that's a big topic. Unless you are fixed in that knowledge, you can't really begin the practice of devotional service. But once you have some understanding of that, then it makes sense. And you can have faith that you're approaching the prayojan, which is pure love for Krishna, return back, liberation from this world, going back home, back to Godhead. So, Sarvasya Chaham Mriti Sannivishto, this is one of several places where Krishna describes that he's in everyone's heart, within the heart. Prabhupada always quotes 1861, I think it is, Ishwarak Savabhutanam Viddesher Junatishtiti Brahmayan Savabhutani Yantrarudhani Mayaya. That the Ishwara, the Lord, the Paramatma, is within the heart of every living being. Riddeshe means in the area of the heart. Rid or Riddha is the heart. And all living beings are wandering. Sarvabhutani Konteya Yantra Rudani Maya. Throughout this world, different species, as if mounted on a machine made of the material energy. Yantra is a machine. And Maya means Krishna's material energy. So this is what we've been doing since time immemorial. And this super soul has always been with us. Whatever body we inhabit, whether it's Brahma, as Prabhupada with his favorite saying, from Brahma down to the little ant, Krishna's with us, and he's reminding us, giving us intelligence, what we're supposed to do in that particular form, and he's also giving us intelligence through books like Bhagavad Gita. He's trying to speak from within, but we're so covered we can't hear him. Sometimes we hear a little inkling of it that's called conscience. We have this guide, you know when you're doing something wrong. But people, if they keep acting against the rules and immorally, then they can't hear that voice anymore. They become conscienceless. This is called sociopathy or psychopathy. And unfortunately, it's too common today. So there's one devotee, remember, he had this phrase he kind of created, but it's good, having a Krishna conscience, meaning that you absorb this Shastra and the desires of the Lord, the spiritual master, and that becomes your guiding light. That's a Krishna conscience. Oh no, I can't do that. The things that you would have done without thinking about them. But no, I can't eat that. It's not offered, and you can't offer it. It's unofferable. The whole list. So we're meant to really develop that Krishna conscience, and when we are always thinking like that, then we're closer to the super soul. The super soul can be directly guiding you. Upadrashta anumanta. The ordinary person, he's overseeing and he's permitting, but for the devotees, he's actually giving the instruction. Do this, go there. No, you shouldn't do that. That's the modes of nature. You should go. So when we're seeing and acting through the eyes of Shastra, then we're really in touch with the Super Soul and Krishna. So matte smriti jnanam apohanancha. So Krishna is blessing us with remembrance and with knowledge and also forgetfulness. That also, as I mentioned, can sometimes be a blessing. And then this very important part, the latter part of the verse, all the Vedic knowledge is aiming to me. Vedaischa sarva ahameva vedyo. I am to be known by all the Vedas. Now sometimes that's not so obvious. You read the Upanishads, some of them, they seem to be just speaking of Brahman, But when you see everything in context, so what is that Brahman? Krishna says, the end of the last chapter, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the basis of the Brahman. You read the Brahma Samhita, that verse. The effulgence, the Brahman effulgence is just Krishna's bodily effulgence. It's all resting on him. So then it all makes sense. Vedanta Quid. He wrote the Vedas in the form of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is understood to be an incarnation of Krishna, literary incarnation of God. So he's compiler of Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas, and he's the goal of Vedanta. That's why Prabhupada's name is so nice, Bhakti Vedanta. The end of knowledge is bhakti. And there's a verse in the 7th chapter, a famous verse, Bahunam Jamanamante Jnanavan Mam Papadyate, that after many, many bursts of cultivating knowledge, those who are actually in knowledge, they surrender unto me, knowing that Vasudeva is everything. So the more we understand that and believe in it, and then we'll act according to the instructions given in the Bhagavad Gita. All right, one or two more. Text 16. Dvavimau purusha loke charaschakshara evacha charak sarvani bhutani kutasto kshara uchyate. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Purport. Now, Prabhupada has a special use of the word fallible and infallible. Basically, it means those who can fall or have fallen, fallible, and infallible. Krishna is famously infallible. He can't fall. Usually the word for him there is achyuta. Literally means no falling. But here's akshara means you can't be cut or cut away from the spiritual world. As already explained, the Lord in his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving, in summary, the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities, who are innumerable, can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called jiva bhuta. And the Sanskrit word given here, charak sarvani bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world there is no such thing as creation, but since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies, which are changing. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. There, all exists in oneness. Charak sarvani bhutani. Any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to the small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. So, now, there's this concept, fallible and infallible. So infallible corresponds to what is commonly called nitya mukta, or eternally liberated, nitya siddha, nitya mukta. And the fallible, all living entities in this material world, us, we're nitya baddha. So nitya means eternally, baddha means bound. Nitya baddha means eternally bound to this world of change of matter and going through this. And then you have the nitya mukta, those who are eternally liberated with Krishna. But then how did we get here? This word nitya has to be qualified, because we can't be eternally bound. Otherwise, what's the point of practicing Krishna consciousness? If we can't get free, then what's the point? So we have to be able to become free and get back to our original state. So nitya means it's so long, and it happened. Our fall happened out of the realm of time. There's no time in the spiritual world. It's just the eternal present. There's no past, no future. So things that happen there happen in a different way. They can go on, repetitively for eternity, and it's ever fresh. And things seem to be changing. How are you going to have a rasa dance without the moon? The moon has to come up, but there's no need of the moon there. Everything's self-effulgent. So what do you need? But you need a moon to set the mood, right? Of a rasa dance. And if the sun doesn't come up, then how's Krishna go out and milk the cows? This is all going on eternally in Goloka Vrindavan, as described. So all of that is arranged there. But here, this is the world of change. It's the world of time. And time is pushing everything. These 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, byproducts of children or offspring or something. The dwindling and death. That's inevitable for the body. But those changes don't affect the soul. This is the whole first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. And coming to the soul platform, living on the spiritual platform at every moment, is what we're striving for. So there's a way of being spiritual even in the material world. And in fact, seeing the world as Krishna's energy to such an extent that it practically becomes the spiritual world. This is described by Srila Prabhupada. From Krishna's point of view, there's no material energy, it's all his energy. But this energy is specifically created to give us the illusion of our own separate little existence without Krishna. But we're meant to learn the lesson. We can't be happy that way, because we are always going to be facing death. So we want to get back to the Akshara stage, the infallible. Akshara is kind of be separated or cut away. So we're artificially separated from Krishna. We can't really be separated, but we seem to be, and therefore we have this illusion that there's no God, or his God is far away, or I'm God, anything but that I'm a servant of God, right? Anything in order to get away from that. So that's our disease, is our rebellions against our actual status as Krishna's servants. So I wrote a little poem describing. Have you ever heard this one? The fall and redemption of the soul? Maybe. Okay. Yeah, the poetry book. So all the words end in ITI. That's how I started the poem. Actually, the poem started with noticing the conjunction of these 2 words, cupidity. Have you heard of that word, cupidity? You can imagine what it means. It's an even mixture of lust and greed. If you look it up in the dictionary, I think the primary meaning now is greed, but you can see where it started from. So lust and greed. So cupidity and stupidity, you can imagine. So I worked with that and I grew out this whole poem. Where Krishna lives, felicity abounds. With pure simplicity and loving sensibility, all serve him with humility. But when a living entity rejects his true identity, and out of sheer stupidity surrenders to cupidity, he loses all sagacity, and with it all capacity to understand reality or curb his sensuality. Abandoning humility, he touts his own ability, forgetting his fragility and fortune's volatility. Immersed in asininity for what seems an infinity of lives devoid of piety, he suffers in anxiety till contact with God's devotee, perhaps of utmost brevity, awakens his affinity for words of the divinity. Perceiving the futility of all his imbecility, the soul regains his sanity and casts away his vanity. Endowed with new humility, he serves with all ability and growing spontaneity his guru and the deity. Regaining his identity, the wayward living entity returns to the fraternity of Krishna for eternity. So that's Akshara. That's the Kshara becoming Akshara. No, the Akshara becoming Kshara, and then again becoming Akshara. So that's the idea. There's a slideshow with this too. So that's the story. We are now part of the class of the fallible beings, and we've made a big mistake, and we're trying to rectify it. That's what our whole program is. Okay, any discussion at this point? So, see if there's anyone online. You never know. They might tune in. Harekrishna Tapas, thank you for tuning in. Haribol. All right, moving on. Now we have the conclusion of this chapter in the next 3-4 verses. And he's going to be discussing the Supreme Person, because after all, it is the yoga of the Supreme Person. Uttama Purushastvanya Padamatme Judaritaha Yolokatrayamavishya Vibhartyavyaya Ishwaraha. Besides these two, the fallible and infallible living entities, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. Now notice this is an interesting phenomenon in the Bhagavad Gita, that periodically Krishna, he's talking about himself, but he's talking about himself in the third person. Isn't it? It's interesting. Purport. The idea of this verse is very nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad 2.13 and the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.13. It is clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned, and some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality who is Paramatma. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows: Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one Supreme Living Personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. Now, I'm reading this Gita. This is a 2013 version, Since that time, we've made various adjustments. And one of the adjustments here is to put in the whole verse. Because Prabhupada, what he's saying when he says the purport, he's giving basically a translation of the whole verse here, which I unfortunately don't know, but I know two of the lines. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yobadadati Kaman. That's the two lines. And then there's two more lines, which Prabhupada just defined here. This is one of the first Sanskrit verses I learned. Nityo Nityanam. Nitya is a singular. There's one eternal among all the eternals. And eternal what? Chaitana Chaitananam. One eternal conscious being among all the eternal conscious beings. And how do you differentiate that one? Eko Bahunam, the many others. He Vidadati Kaman, provides the Kaman. Kaman here means their necessities for life, things that you need, things that you want. So there can only be one, who's doing all of that. Otherwise he would, So that's describing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he's this Paramatma, and those who are wise can understand him, and only those can understand perfect peace, not others. So that's the theme. One of the themes of this chapter: understanding how dependent we are. We are for our very intelligence and remembrance, for everything, for the food we eat, for the light, electricity, fire. We're completely dependent on Krishna, and kind of our whole life should be dedicated to offering back, a little bit of what He's given to us. He's given us so much, we can offer Him back as much as we possibly can. And that completes the cycle, and we are plugged in properly. So, Uttama Purusha, there's a Supreme, and then Krishna, and I'm that Supreme. Yeah. He's going to say, I'm God. Next verse. Yasmat charamatitoham aksharat pichotamaha atosmi loke vedecha patita purushottamaha. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the Supreme Person. So interesting, he goes from third person here to first person. Here in the 17, he says that there's the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the Lord Himself. It's all third. Then he says, and I'm that person. Purport: no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies in the Purusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures. As confirmed in the Nirukti dictionary, Lokyate Vedarto Nena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures. Okay, now I have to call your attention to this, because if you're going to read Prabhupada's books, you're going to come across phrases like this. And the use of the word purpose. Purpose means purpose, but that may not mean purpose. Prabhupada uses the word purpose sometimes, and you can find it in the Oxford Dictionary, to mean purport. And here is one of those things. I think in the latest edition you'll find the purport of the Vedas is explained in the Smriti scriptures. It makes some sense to say purpose, but the meaning of the Vedas is explained. That's really what it means. The Supreme Lord, that's what Artho, and Artha is a meaning. Vedartha means the meaning of the Vedas. The Supreme Lord, in His localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, Chandogya Upanishad 8.12.3. Tavad esha samprasado smat charirat samutaya param jyoti rupam sampadya svena rupen abhinishpadyate sa uttama purusha. The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Then in his form he remains in his spiritual identity. That Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing His spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as the Paramatma. By incarnating Himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara, that's Veda Vyasa, He explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. Okay. Let's do one more. Yomam evam asamudho janati purushottamam sasarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. Now here comes, what are we going to do with all this knowledge? So if you understand this, you got to do it. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharat. Purport. There are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step. And still there are so many stubborn commentators on the Bhagavad Gita who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entities to be one and the same. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hogs is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from the Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. I think that was changed to purport. The word bhajati is very significant. In many places, the word bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness, in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth. He has already come to the point, because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all the speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time. Shrama eva hi kevalam. There's a phrase in the Bhagavatam. Shrama eva hi kevalam means it's all just a lot of hard work, you know. So this is Prabhupada's conclusion. Every purport, he's giving us this conclusion, and this whole, the whole chapter leads to this. He said, Yo mam evam samasambuddha. The one who knows me, this is Krishna speaking, as that Supreme Personality of God, the source of the super soul, the one who's holding up the planet, the source of all the energies. Then a person is asamudho. He's, without a doubt, then he knows everything. Now, what is that everything? It doesn't mean that you know the number of atoms in the world, but it means that you know everything about your own identity and your relationship with Krishna, and about how to act in that relationship, and that's basically all we need to know. And now it's time for Arti. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol. Thank you for your attention.